Hello, buddy. Welcome back to the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my third and final Midnight Tales video for you guys. And this was titled 6 Disturbing True Gas Station Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the room in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
This was back in the fall of 2021, when my husband and I were doing this big move from Iowa to Maryland. We had packed everything up and decided to drive straight through over a couple days, and our first stop was supposed to be somewhere around the middle of Ohio. We were pushing late into the evening, trying to make decent time before calling it a night.
Yeah, that's one thing about a long road trip is that you got to push ahead while you can, because if you start getting sleepy, you might end up crashing your vehicle into somebody else or into the ditch. So it's always best to try to keep going if you can, but if not, pull over at a rest stop or at some hotel to see if they got a room available for the night. And then you'll be back on the road the next day.
That whole stretch from Iowa through Indiana is just miles and miles of flat land and empty fields. Like, seriously, you can go a good 10 minutes without seeing another car. I think we were somewhere in Indiana when things started getting weird. We were cruising along the highway when we hit this really thick fog out of nowhere. Like 1 second it's clear, the next it's like we're driving through a cloud. It was creepy enough on its own, but then we saw this massive blood stain across the road. I'm not talking about a smear. I mean a huge splatter like something had been hit really hard. My first thought was maybe a deer or some big animal, but there was no body. No roadkill, no guts, not even anything off to the side. Just a fresh-looking red mess across the pavement. That kind of set the tone for the rest of the night.
Maybe the animal that got hit was already probably picked up by DOT workers or some hunters that wanted to grab fresh roadkill. You just never know nowadays. But that is always disturbing to see on the road.
A little while later, we needed to stop. Both of us had to pee, and we were running low on gas, so we pulled off at the next place we could find. It was one of those tiny roadside gas stations that feel like they only exist for long-haul truckers. I think it was called something like Rusty's Pit Stop, or something equally backwoods sounding. It had this tiny parking lot, completely dark except for a single overhead light, and only one semi-truck was parked there. The station itself had one of those old-school diners attached to it, like something out of a movie. We parked, filled up the tank, and then headed inside to find the restrooms. The moment we walked in, I got hit with the weirdest vibe. Like every single person in the building turned to look at us. And I mean every person. There were maybe 5 or 6 people crowded around these gambling machines in the entrance area. Yes, even a couple kids who looked way too young to be there. And a few older guys leaning against the counter, chatting with the cashier.
Yeah, I would agree. If they're young kids, they shouldn't be near any gambling machine, because then they'll lose all their money. But if everybody just starts staring at you, that's a weird sign of concern. Just use the bathroom and get back to your car and go before someone decides to start a conversation with you. And they're not even that friendly, probably.
But they all just stared. It wasn't aggressive, but it wasn't exactly friendly either. Just this kind of quiet, eerie stillness, like we'd interrupted something. As we made our way toward the hallway with the bathrooms, we noticed this glass door at the very end, and behind it was probably the most random and unsettling thing I've ever seen in a public place. There was this dusty little scene set up, like some kind of forgotten display. Mannequins posed around an old diner table. It looked like they were supposed to be a wholesome 1950s family. Mom, Dad, 2 kids, and a waiter frozen in this weird forward-leaning pose, holding a tray and smiling like a wax horror movie character.
That is something you do not see every day at a gas station / diner. Whoever owns that place must be really disturbed that there's hardly nobody stopping there that he decided to recreate a family at a dinner table. After seeing that, I'll be getting out of there quick as possible.
The whole thing was covered in grime and spider webs, and the mannequins looked ancient, cracked, peeling, and definitely not kept up for show. There were flies buzzing around the table, and the curtain behind it was so caked in dust it looked like no one had touched it in decades. I realized the display was sitting right in front of what probably used to be the connecting door to the diner, now totally blocked off. My husband and I just kind of stood there for a second, staring at it, trying to figure out what the hell we were looking at. There wasn't anything wrong with it exactly. It was just off. The energy in the place, the way everyone was silent when we came in, and now this bizarre diner from the graveyard scene. It felt like we had walked into a place that existed outside normal time. We didn't say much to each other, just rushed through our bathroom trip and got ready to get the hell out of there. But here's the part that still gives me goosebumps. When we came out of the hallway, the place was completely empty. I mean, empty. All the people who had been playing the machines, the guys at the counter, even the cashier, just gone. We were in the bathrooms for maybe 3 minutes, tops. There weren't enough vehicles in the lot for that many people to have been there in the first place, let alone disappear that fast.
Yeah, how in the world did they go so quickly? Because if there weren't that many vehicles outside, there won't no way they can just all run out of the store, get into their vehicle, and go. Because then they would have heard the door opening and closing while they were using the bathroom and probably heard the cars screeching off. Maybe this gas station is haunted and those are not real people, they're ghosts that used to hang around that place. That's my theory, but that would be spooky if it was true.
We didn't stick around to investigate. We hurried out to the car, locked the doors, and drove off without saying a word. For the rest of the drive to Ohio, we kept trying to figure out what that place was, or what was wrong with it, but we couldn't come up with anything that made sense. There was no clear threat, no real event that you could point to as the scary part. But that stop stuck with both of us in a way we still can't explain. Even now, just remembering it gives me that crawling, uncomfortable feeling like we had almost stumbled into something we weren't supposed to see.
I'll say you gotten off of the beaten path to your destination and you ended up somewhere that I would like to consider the Twilight Zone. Because everything like they described in that diner was set up in the 50s, but it didn't look like it was touched. But then when you're in the gas station part, there's a lot of life still showing there. And then when they leave the bathrooms to go out back to their car, everybody's gone. Really disturbing and spooky all at the same time.
So this happened around 7 years ago when I was about 17. My parents had gone away for the weekend. Nothing unusual. They used to do that a lot and trusted me to stay home alone. Normally, I'd crash with friends or hang out at a cousin's place, mainly because my parents' house gave off weird vibes when you were there by yourself.
Hey, you ain't lying because sometimes when my parents go out for like their anniversary dinner date or they just go out Christmas shopping or go somewhere else without me, it does feel creepy. So I just always turn on the TV or listen to music just to not only pass the time but feel the atmosphere so it won't be so negative feeling and quiet.
Especially at night. It's this older house way out in a small town where not much happens. And while it's safe, the quiet can get too quiet if you know what I mean. That weekend, though, things didn't quite go how I planned. I was supposed to stay at my friend Bree's place on Saturday, but at the last minute, her parents got weird about sleepovers, again, and told me I couldn't stay. I wasn't totally shocked. They were always a bit flaky like that, but it still left me scrambling for a plan around 9:30 at night. I didn't love the idea of going back to my empty house, so I called my older brother to see if I could come to his place instead. At the time, he was living with his girlfriend and her little kid. and he said it'd be a hassle for me to come over because of their barking dog, but he offered to drive over and stay with me instead. He told me to give him about 20 minutes, and he'd meet me at our parents' house. Just for context, my brother's this big, tattooed, serious-looking dude, like someone you probably wouldn't want to mess with in a dark alley. While I waited for him to get there, I decided to stop at the gas station near the highway to grab a soda and something salty. It was pretty dead, which was totally normal for a Saturday night in a town where most places shut down by 8. I pulled into the lot, noticed just a couple cars, and headed for the door. There was a guy standing outside smoking, and he opened the door for me without saying anything, which didn't seem weird. It's the South. People still do stuff like that here.
First of all, if I saw somebody with tattoos I wouldn't want to be around him in a dark alley or anyone like that as well, because I'll be afraid of getting mugged or killed. But also, he is correct. Everybody down here in the South likes to hold the door for everybody. I mean, I do my share of good deeds like that at gas stations or any other store, because if somebody got a lot of things in their hand, they won't be able to open the door, so I'll just open up for them and they walk on out. And some people do the same for me. Might as well call it polite courtesy.
I gave him a quick smile and thanked him, then headed inside. As soon as I stepped in, I caught this second guy near the entrance who immediately started giving me that look. You know the kind. Full on up and down scan, like I was on display. He muttered something like, "Hey there, gorgeous. Walking around all by yourself?" And I instantly felt grossed out. I didn't even acknowledge it and walked toward the snacks, trying to shake it off. But then he shouted after me and called me a bitch, loud enough for it to echo in the small store.
Oh, heck no. If I was an employee and I heard a woman being called the B word from a dude that she do not want to have a conversation with, I'll be like, "Sir, leave the woman alone and get what you need and go." But then also I'll be afraid of him like staring back at me or giving me the look like he was going to kill me later. Let's just continue on with the story and see what happens next, shall we?
Honestly, I wasn't scared. I figured he was drunk or high or just trying to act tough. That kind of stuff happens more than I'd like to admit. I paid for my stuff, ignored him again, and was glad when I didn't see either of them by the time I was heading out. But here's where things took a turn. I started walking across the parking lot toward my car, casually checking my phone to see if my brother had texted me yet. When I looked up, the guy who catcalled me was standing near one of the gas pumps, just staring at me. He didn't say anything at first, just glared, and then muttered something like, "You think you can ignore me, huh?" I shot back some sarcastic comment. I don't even remember what, just something to make it clear I wasn't impressed. And I got into my car. He didn't look happy about it, and I noticed his buddy had also reappeared. As I started the car and went to leave, I saw their vehicle, an old beat-up sedan, pulling out from the other side of the lot. They were facing me, just sitting there, not moving, and both of them were staring like they were deciding something. Then, the guy who had opened the door earlier smiled and made that creepy slice across the neck gesture. I remember thinking, "Really, dude? Dramatic much?" And I rolled my eyes as I pulled out. But sure enough, they pulled out behind me and started following. At first, I didn't panic. I mean, around here people talk big, but rarely go through with anything. But I wasn't about to take any chances either, so I took a couple of side roads to see if they were really tailing me. And they definitely were. When they realized I was trying to shake them, they got super aggressive. They pulled up close, nearly riding my bumper, and started laying on the horn nonstop. Their headlights were basically inside my back seat. I called my brother while this was happening and told him what was going on, trying to keep my voice calm. He didn't hesitate, told me to head home and that he'd take care of it. So I made my way back, and even though I took a few detours, I was only a few minutes out. As I pulled into the driveway, I felt this wave of relief crash over me. There, at the end of the driveway, was my brother, barefoot, shirt off, just standing there with the kind of posture that says, "Come at me." He had his pit bull sitting next to him, all calm but alert, and his hand resting on something that looked very much like a gun. I pulled into the yard, and those two creeps started to pull in behind me, until they saw him. Then it was like watching rats scatter. They reversed so fast and tore off down the road without looking back. To this day, I have no clue what they were planning, and honestly, I don't want to know. But I'll never forget the image of my brother standing there like some kind of protective warrior from a movie. That night could have ended a lot differently if he hadn't been there. I still think about it sometimes, and just feel grateful.
Thank God you called your brother and he protected you. But that shows them creeps you should not mess with anybody that has a overprotective brother like that. Because if he had a gun, he would have pulled it out and fired it in the air to scare the crap out of them or probably shoot one of their windows out. But yeah, if that guy was giving a motion to her with the finger across the throat, they probably weren't joking. They were probably planning on trying to pull her off the side of the road and get her out of the car and murder her for not even paying attention to that other guy. Talk about two pieces of crap of humanity right there who don't care about any other people at all. But man, I'm just glad that when she pulled the driveway, the brother took care of it and they took off, never going to be seen again.
Last year, I was living in this fairly busy city in the US, and one of my best friends lived about a half-hour walk away from me. I didn't have a car back then, so unless I managed to catch a bus, I was usually just hoofing it everywhere. I'd hang out at her place pretty regularly, like at least once a week, and we'd usually stay up talking or watching dumb shows until it got late. I'd sometimes leave around midnight, and while most people might have taken an Uber or something, I figured, hey, it's well lit, and there's always people around downtown. I'm in my mid-20s, and maybe a little too confident for my own good, but walking home never really fazed me. On this particular night, I stopped by a gas station that's just a block or so from my friend's place because I had a craving for something salty, chips or maybe a sandwich. My friend had given me the leftover pizza we ordered earlier, but it didn't fit in my bag, so I was awkwardly walking around with this huge pizza box in my arms like a weirdo. I head into the gas station, and right as I walk in, there's this cop standing near the entrance who immediately goes, super serious, "Hey, I'm gonna need to confiscate that pizza." And I'm way too trusting sometimes, so I just kind of blink and start handing it over. Honestly, I didn't care. I wasn't going to eat it anyway because it was garbage. But then the guy bursts out laughing, clearly shocked that I fell for his dumb joke. I fake laughed along, mostly to not seem like a buzzkill, but inside I was thinking, cool, weird cop humor. Love that.
I thought the cop would actually make a joke about confiscating somebody's donuts, but I never thought I would hear one confiscating pizza. But hey, that was kind of funny. But I got a bad feeling that this might be one of them creepy cops that won't take no for an answer or leave somebody alone.
I turn to head deeper into the store, and then he tells me, completely straight-faced this time, "But seriously, you can't bring your backpack in here." At that point, I'm second-guessing everything, but I awkwardly hand it over, assuming maybe that store has a theft problem or something. Felt a little odd, but I wasn't in the mood to argue. But as I started walking through the aisles, I realized this dude is now tailing me. He's casually asking me about my night, like small talk kind of stuff, and I tried to be polite but vague, hoping he'd lose interest. But then he switches gears and starts complimenting how I look, and I just felt this heavy drop in my stomach like, here we go. It went from mildly annoying to, please leave me alone really quick. He starts pushing for my number, and when I tell him I have a boyfriend and that I'm really not looking for more friends, he gets this weird offended tone like, oh, so I'm not even good enough to be your friend now. He was walking so close behind me that he kept bumping into me, and I was just trying to stay calm and get my snacks so I could get the hell out of there. At that point, I felt incredibly stuck. Like, yeah, I could tell him to back off more aggressively, but he had a badge and a gun, and it was almost midnight. I didn't feel like taking any chances. I checked out, got my bag back, and basically speed walked out the door without looking back. But when I did glance behind me a few seconds later, I saw him just standing inside the gas station looking out at me through the glass, still staring, not smiling, just watching. Now, this gas station has a huge parking lot that kind of stretches out between the store and the street, so I had a decent amount of ground to cover to get out of there. I rushed across it, and just as I hit the sidewalk, I heard the door open behind me. He had come out and was now following me down the street, totally silent, just pacing behind me with this blank expression like he wasn't even thinking, just watching. I called my friend right away, trying not to cry or freak out too loud on the phone, and explained what was happening. They were furious and stayed on the line with me, checking my location, trying to keep me talking while I speed walked like my life depended on it. I kept glancing back, and every time he was still there, a few paces behind, just walking and staring. No talking, no yelling, just unsettlingly quiet.
I'd be like, dude, what in the world's your problem? You know, you act like this, somebody can report you to your boss and have you fired, you know. Man, cops should not use their authority since they're wearing the badge and they got a gun just to sway over women to get phone numbers from them. Especially taking women's backpacks just to look at them. I mean, she ain't going there to steal nothing. Man, this guy don't even need to be on the force if he's going to act like this.
After a few blocks, I looked again, and he was just gone. No clue where he went. He must have turned down a side street or dipped into a parking lot. But I didn't stop moving until I was inside my building with the door locked. My friend stayed on the phone with me until I was home safe, and I didn't sleep super well that night. Nothing technically happened, which I guess is the best outcome, but the whole thing left me rattled. I never went back to that gas station again, and now I double check for who's working there if I even go near it.
Man, I'm sorry that you went through that. But I guess he saw you on the phone thinking that he was going to get in a lot of trouble, so he just booked it. But I'm just glad that she was able to make it back into her apartment and be with her friend before this guy does anything sickening.
This happened a little over a year ago when I was working the overnight shift at this small gas station that was just a short walk from my house. I was 31 at the time, and yeah, I know a lot of people would probably say it's risky for a woman to be working alone all night, but honestly, I felt fine about it. It was a quiet store, not much foot traffic, and the sheriff's office was literally just across the road. Like, I could throw a rock and hit the front door if I wanted to. Most nights I'd see maybe 20 or 30 people during the whole 8-hour shift, so it wasn't exactly a high-stress gig. It was around 3:30 in the morning, and I stepped outside to do the usual. Check the trash, sweep up, take a smoke break, that sort of thing. I had one headphone in and was vibing to some music when I noticed a guy across the road in the sheriff's parking lot. He was kind of hunched forward, swaying a bit like he was either peeing or just extremely drunk and trying to stay upright. The whole thing was weird because the building had been closed since like 4 p.m., and this guy looked completely out of place. Then I realized I recognized the shirt. Torn up white tee. Definitely the same guy who had come in hours earlier acting super off. He gave off bad energy even back then, like the kind of person you instinctively avoid.
There's a guy standing right there looking at her at the gas station, and he was a customer of theirs who's acting very strange. I would be getting on the phone and call the person in the sheriff's office to tell him to look outside. There's a strange guy just swaying back and forth in your parking lot. Might need to send a deputy out there to grab him and throw him in the jail to cool off. because you never know what a drunk man would do.
I tried not to make eye contact or do anything that might draw attention, just casually minded my business. It was all going fine until a woman pulled into the lot to get gas. That's when I saw him glance between me and the car a couple of times, like he was calculating something, and the vibe instantly shifted. I walked the customer out after her purchase, still holding my cigarette, and she noticed him too, muttering angrily to himself and throwing his arms around like he was arguing with someone who wasn't there. She looked a little concerned and told me to stay safe, and I made some dumb joke about him needing to be more scared of me, just trying to shake the tension. But after she left, I realized he was now facing directly toward our parking lot, still swaying, still yelling nonsense. Only now it felt like he was yelling at me. His eyes were wide and wild, like he was seeing through me or something, and my gut immediately told me, this guy's not just drunk, he's unpredictable. I slowly backed into the store and locked the door behind me, but I had that heavy pit of the stomach feeling you get when something's not right. I figured I should at least be ready if things got worse, so I typed up a quick, temporarily closed sign on the computer and started making my way to the front doors. That's when I saw him cross the road and stumble into our tiny lot. I barely got the second door locked before he was practically right outside. I motioned at him with that slice across the throat hand signal like, nope, not happening, we're closed, and shook my head just to make it clear. He screamed something I couldn't even make out and stomped off, but not calmly, more like he was exploding with rage. Now I was officially freaked out. I grabbed the phone and called the cops, and just as I hung up, he came back. This time he started yanking on the door handles, banging on the glass, even tried running into the door to break it open. It wasn't going to budge. It was thick and reinforced. But still, it scared the hell out of me. I made the mistake of yelling through the glass that I'd called the cops, and he was about to get arrested, which, in hindsight, maybe wasn't the best move. Because the second I said that, he bolted, took off into the darkness, like a wild animal. The cops showed up and searched the area for a solid hour, driving up and down nearby streets, but they never found him. No one saw which way he ran, and he was definitely on foot, which made it even weirder that he just vanished, since he never technically did anything and they didn't catch him. I didn't file a report, but that incident stuck with me in a big way. I finished the rest of that shift behind locked doors, heart still pounding, just waiting for the sun to come up. I didn't see him again after that night, but it messed with me more than I realized. For months afterward, every time I heard footsteps or a car pulling in, I'd tense up and check the windows, just in case. Looking back, I don't know if I should have kept quiet instead of warning him about the police. Maybe they would have caught him. I'm just glad I don't work there anymore.
Yeah, I agree. You should have not even yelled out the door saying that you called the cops and they're on their way to get him, because then he would have been caught red-handed and thrown in the hoosegow. And if they find out that he was either drunk or on drugs, then they can arrest him and put him away for disturbing the peace. But I'm just glad that she's okay and didn't get hurt otherwise.
This happened one morning last winter when I had to be in for work unusually early. It was around 4 a.m., and while it was definitely cold out, the roads were dry and there wasn't any snow on the ground yet. I'd been driving for maybe 15 minutes when I glanced down and noticed my gas tank was just above empty. No big deal. I had time to spare, so I figured I'd top off before heading in. A few minutes later, I saw a brightly lit gas station with a few cars at the pumps, so I pulled in without thinking twice. As I'm pulling into a spot, I noticed this guy standing near a beat-up old van by the store entrance. He wasn't pumping gas or walking in, just kind of lingering in that "I might ask you for something" way. He instantly gave off the vibe of someone who was going to hit me with a sob story followed by a request for cash. I tried not to stare, but took a quick glance his way as I drove past. He didn't seem to notice me, so I parked, got out of my car, and immediately got hit with ridiculously loud hip-hop music blasting through the gas station speakers, like the night shift worker was pretending the place was a club instead of a convenience store. I prepaid at the pump, popped the nozzle in my tank, and just before I started filling up, I heard a man's voice trying to cut through the music. I looked toward the store, and sure enough, that same guy was now walking toward me. I couldn't really understand him at first, but for some reason, I motioned for him to come a little closer, even though every bit of common sense was telling me not to.
Oh my goodness. If you said that he's got that look where he wants to walk up and ask you for money, even try to encourage him to walk over. But yeah, I'd be mad too if I went to a gas station and somebody was working there playing all loud hip hop music. I mean, that ain't no disco or dance party club. I don't even like it when people pull up to the gas station, they got those radio playing loud, and it's like those hip hop or rap music that has a lot of cuss words in it. I just can't stand it. I would just like hurry up, fill the pump up in my mom or dad's vehicle, and let's hightail it out of there.
He stepped into speaking range and asked if I had jumper cables. Honestly, I was relieved for a second. It wasn't the usual money pitch, just someone needing a jump, something totally normal. I told him I didn't have cables with me since I had just recently started driving this car and hadn't stocked it with the usual emergency stuff yet. He nodded, then asked if I'd mind calling his girlfriend for him, said his prepaid phone was out of minutes and he needed her to come get him so he could make it to work. I figured, sure, that's reasonable enough. He gave me a number. I called, and after a few rings, I got the default voicemail message you hear on a brand new phone with no custom greeting, and the mailbox was full. I told him I couldn't leave a message, and without hesitation, he rattled off another number. Same exact thing. Full mailbox, generic recording. Now my gut was starting to get involved. I had this weird, sinking feeling, like this wasn't the first time someone had been asked to call this girlfriend, and maybe this girlfriend didn't even exist. Before I could say anything, he asked if I could give him a ride up the road to where his car was parked. That caught me off guard. I had assumed the van he'd been standing next to was his, but he said no. His car was about a mile away at another gas station. I actually knew the one he was talking about. It was old, tucked back off the road, surrounded by overgrown bushes, and most importantly, it wasn't open 24/7. That place had closed hours ago, and definitely wasn't a spot you'd expect someone to leave a car overnight, hoping to find help later. He said he left his car there, borrowed a bike from someone, and rode down to the gas station I was at now. The whole story sounded more and more sketchy the longer he talked. Something about it just didn't make sense. Who lends out a bicycle at 4 in the morning in freezing weather? And why would you walk or ride away from your broken down car, only to end up just hanging out in front of a van at a random gas station? Even though every part of me was screaming, "This is a bad idea," I didn't know how to end the conversation. Against my better judgment, I actually told him I'd take him. He smiled and said he was going to put the bike inside the gas station so it wouldn't get stolen before the owner came to get it. The second he turned his back, I moved fast. I yanked the nozzle out of my tank, slammed it back on the pump, bolted to my driver's side, jumped in, started the engine, and got the hell out of there without looking back. I didn't even care what he saw or thought. I just had this deep instinct that I needed to be gone.
Well, thank God you trusted your gut instinct, because if he said he has a car that he parked at a gas station that is no longer operating, then something tells me he was going to probably just get you to go over there just so he could rob you and take your car and leave you stranded. I'm just glad she did the right thing when he walked off. She put the gas nozzle back into the pump and got in her car and drove off without looking back.
That summer, I had just gotten out of a bad relationship and moved back home to reset before heading back to school in the fall. I picked up a full-time job at this gas station just a short drive from my parents' place and spent my free time messing around with old friends from high school. Everything felt like a much-needed break from life, at least for that first month. The gas station was in a decent suburb, so I figured it'd be an easy job. What I didn't realize was how many creepers actually come through places like that, even in a nice area. We had our regulars, and one of them was this guy, probably late 30s, who slowly started doing this thing where he'd wait in the longer line just to check out at my register. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I was 21, still carrying baggage from an abusive relationship, and didn't exactly have the highest self-esteem, so I chalked it up to him just being extra friendly. But after a while, I noticed he was showing up more often. Like, way more often. Not just once a day, but sometimes multiple times during one shift. He always came off super polite, real dad energy. And every so often, he'd have his tween daughters with him, which made him seem totally harmless to me. Eventually, though, he got upset when I switched to evening shifts, because apparently that meant he couldn't drop by as often. He even told me that flat out. That's when I realized this dude wasn't just being friendly. He was keeping tabs on when I worked. I started actively avoiding him. If I saw his car pull in, I'd disappear into the back to stock the coolers or pretend I was busy. Then it got worse. He began showing up right when my shift ended, so I started waiting inside until he left. One night, I headed out to my car, and he just popped out from behind it like some horror movie jump scare. I instinctively stepped back and told him flat out that I wasn't interested in any way whatsoever. He just smiled and said something like, "Don't worry, I'll win you over eventually." That was my breaking point. I started changing my schedule constantly. Early mornings, late nights, midday, anything to make it harder for him to predict when I'd be there. And just when I thought things couldn't get weirder, this woman stormed into the store with two kids trailing behind her. She walks straight up to the counter and starts shouting at her daughters, "Is this the girl?" They both nod like it's some sort of police lineup. Then the woman turns to me and starts yelling, accusing me of messing around with her husband. I had no clue what she was talking about. Apparently, this creep had been telling his wife all sorts of delusional things. How he had a young gas station girlfriend. How I was moving in with him. The whole 9 yards. The wife was livid, screaming at me in front of customers, while her kids just stood there looking beyond embarrassed. Thankfully, the owner was watching everything from the back room and called the cops. They showed up and made her leave, but now I knew this guy wasn't just a pest. He was unhinged. Around that time, I had started casually seeing a guy who'd occasionally swing by the station at night just to make sure I was okay, especially when I closed alone. One night, my coworker called in sick, and I was stuck closing by myself. 10 minutes before we locked up, in walked Mr. Creeper like he'd been waiting for the perfect opportunity. He didn't even pretend to buy anything, just stood there, leaning on the counter while I tried to finish closing. He kept saying things like, "You shouldn't be working alone like this," and "Why won't you just give me a chance?" He started talking about buying me a car, moving me in, like this was some fantasy life we were supposed to share. I reminded him his wife didn't seem too thrilled about this relationship, and that's when he completely snapped. He flipped over a display rack and started screaming at me, asking what I'd told her. I was trapped. I didn't want to run out into the dark parking lot alone, where my car was parked way off to the side, and I was terrified he'd follow me. By some miracle, the guy I had been dating happened to be driving by and saw my car still there after hours. He stopped in to check on me and immediately realized something was off. As soon as he stepped inside, Creeper made a run for it, just stormed out into the night. My date helped me clean up the mess, sat with me until I calmed down, and practically begged me to quit working there. We called the police, and since it was a small town, they knew exactly who he was. They found him soon after, driving like a maniac in his white Kia. When the officer called to follow up, he told me they found a knife, a roll of duct tape, and rope in the back of his car.
Cops found him and found duct tape and a knife. He was probably either going to kill his wife just so he can be with her or kill her. Almost like if he can't have her, nobody would. But thankfully, it was a small town community and the police were able to find him. Thankfully, she didn't get harmed otherwise and she don't have to see that guy no more. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Tales reactions like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man Score channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and I said that's a wrap. Have a nice day.